Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It is June 22nd. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And again, it was just another range day. It's two-tiered. Early on, we were in this range. We broke through, and if you measure the lower half, raise it up. There was your measured move. We went a few ticks higher than that, but of course, we'd been a few ticks lower than that down here. So that's um, not to be unexpected. So yeah, this is just a range day. We did have a failed break lower right around the lunch hour. It just barely poked below and then got back inside and went higher. I circled this because I'm going to come back and talk about it. Somebody asked me about it. But before we talk about the trades today, one of the things, I got a couple of questions. There were a couple of comments on yesterday's video about counter trend trades. And what you have to remember is even though we got a trend working up here, it's a trend within a trading range. And so, it's not really a counter trend trade if you get a setup that meets all of the criteria at a strong support or a strong resistance on a trading range day. And so make sure you understand that. Yeah, this is a trend working up. And most of the price action here is above the EMA, so you got to be real careful. But if you saw this earlier range here and you caught this resistance and this support and you measured it, and then you see this set up, this one's a little bit aggressive here. But when we got another double top over here with a little failed break higher and that big bearish bar, you can go short there because at the very least you're probably coming back to this trend line. But notice how it pushes right on through and it just goes to the other side. We never even got a retest. We tried here to go back up off this midline, but it couldn't, and it went lower. And another thing here is you also have an overshoot here. And generally when I mark these, they're going to be real far away from the EMA, like down here. This one was real tempting, but I didn't mark this one because we're moving down, and this support, it went right through that support. But even though that went through and looked like we're probably going lower, it fails, gets back inside, and we spend most of the rest of the day going down. But notice on this break we did end up making a new low, and I don't know what's happened late this evening. I haven't even looked, but this thing really rocketed right back up. So maybe something's already come out of the EU. I haven't looked at the news. It doesn't really matter. All we know is that the price action is going up, and they'll come up with some news to justify what did that. So, but yeah, I hope that makes sense on the reversals. You probably don't want to be taking these trades unless you got a lot of experience and you understand what's going on. And you probably wouldn't want to buy down here unless you understand what's going on. But if you realize we've got a trend working up within a trading range, and then you get the overshoot, a lot of times on an overshoot, especially on a trading range when you can't get through the upper support, prices just reverse and they go to the other side. And we did push through here, but it didn't go very far, and it got right back inside and went higher. And I'll talk about this area that I've circled when we get to it, but I'm going to back out and talk about the trades, and we'll go from there. Just back out enough to where this is a little easier seen. But when I came in, we're just going sideways here. You got an overnight high up here, overnight low down here. You got a double bottom in place. You don't know that you got a trading range yet because you can see the channel working up. But when we can't get through there multiple times, then you got to assume that, hey, maybe we got a trading range. And we did end up pushing through, but it ends up we just get a measured move to the other location, a measured move up, and then we turn back down again. So it turns out this was just a midline. But let's talk about the trades. This is a double bottom, so this is basically a new low. You get a first entry short, a second entry short, and a big bullish bar. We're not back to the trend line, but you can probably find a midline in here, and you've got that short trap. I like entering there. It made me a little nervous when it didn't take on off, but when it bounced again here, I like entering here or adding on. It was pretty obvious then that we're probably going on up at least to test that high. There's another little two-legged pullback here, but there's no break of this trend line. There's a trend line working right down through there. I don't know what I grabbed. There's no little trend line. There's no break of it. It moves higher, and then it pulls back. This is your break, and it does end up getting a new low. And where does that happen? Right at the trend line, right where you expect it to bounce. So no real entry there, but there's a great setup right there. And then I like adding on again. And if you weren't in, definitely entering there. You got enough room to get out before you get here. You might have let it break higher and dropped a limit order to try to get a little better entry, but I think you're okay because you're really looking at this as the high. Your line's a little bit higher, and that's really your high. But I like adding on there if you weren't in yet, just go ahead and enter there. And generally, I wouldn't take a breakout pullback long here with this going sideways, but let me show you. You got a new low, you got a first entry short, and you got a second entry short. I don't like going long there. Even if you had of it, would have worked, but I don't like going long there because your stop would have been here and you never would have gotten stopped out. But I don't like these breakout pullback longs because they fail more than anything. But look what happens. You get a double test again. Here's your low. You test it once. You test it twice. And if you pull that line down, you can see that support across there. And that's a double test rule of that area. It's a breakout pullback long. That's a nice bullish bar. Just go long there. And you're probably headed to the other side of this channel. That's exactly where it goes. It does pull back here. And you should have been looking for the measured move up that I showed you. And we aren't there yet. We are pretty close to that line, that upper channel line. But this is the first break, so we're probably going to push up and make a new high. If you can get in here with enough room before you get to here, I'm okay. And the same thing when it pulls back and it traps some more shorts there. That's a new low, so that's a failed second entry short. But again, it's right into that. So it's a little aggressive, but you figure prices are going to keep pushing up and try to hit this. You don't know that, so that's why it's green. Otherwise, it'd probably been blue. If this trend channel line wasn't running across up here, that'd be blue all day long, but it's not. And actually, I take that back. This one may not be because it's really close to the high of the day. At this point, that's the high of the day, so you got to be careful about it. And then we do overshoot here. And then it breaks higher, makes a double top, and turns and goes right out the other side. This is a pretty sure thing, figuring we're going to come back at least to the EMA, but maybe probably all the way down here. But this is why it's not a sure thing, because look what happens. It pushes through and pulls back and tests it again just to be sure. You know, they're trying to double test this to make sure, and you get a double test of this level, and it turns down. I wouldn't go short there. It never triggered anyway. This is a second entry short. Look at the new low. First entry, second entry when it broke lower right there. But I'd wait on this bar. I wouldn't go short right there. I'd wait on this one. And notice too, there's a trend line kind of working up through there. And you do kind of push through and push to a new high. It's probably actually more like this right here. And you do get a little push through, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter on that anyway, because this is really just a retest. And notice the break here in the new high. So that was telling you another reason to go short there. And then you get this double test, and it breaks higher and turns. Just go short right there. Really, actually, I take that back. You probably should wait on this bar. And actually, I'm okay with you going short there. It'd be a little more aggressive, so it'd be green on that. But by the time this closes, if you can get in there, it fails so fast you may not have got filled there. But honestly, I mean, even when it breaks higher and turns down there, I'm almost okay putting a stop there and not even calling it aggressive. But we're working down. You don't want to go short there. There's a little breakout pullback short. It would have worked, but you know, I'd wait on something down here. It's tempting to go long here. But we're just going sideways, and look at all those bars stacked up. You got at least one doji, 3 or 4 bars. We're just kind of going sideways, and then we get this little failed breakout here, and it's right off. And I drew that trend line right down through here. I actually had it a little lower like so, and but I tightened it up later on when we bounced a little early there. But just draw that trend line and you drag it up here. And so you're looking for something to happen right along that line. But it doesn't really matter because you're going sideways and you get the failed break higher. And as long as you get in here, and notice it did break lower and back up, you could have gotten filled with it, only a couple of ticks there and had plenty of room to get out here. And then it pulls back again and it gives you another failed break higher, and it kind of basically respects that trend line again. And so I'm okay with you entering here. It probably would be either, you probably wouldn't get an add-on if you played this one right, because you would have already got filled and it would have backed up and probably got your break-even stop. But this is a little more aggressive because you're closer to the lows, and but you can see how you're making lower highs, and this confirms the trend line. This is a real small risk bar. I like it. It is a little aggressive though. And where does it go? Right to the other side, bounces. And it doesn't really bounce, it just goes sideways to the other side. And I don't like that bar. But this one, I need to explain this one. Really, your entry is here, but your stop has to go up here. But this is actually your signal bar. And when it pushes through and pulls back, that's a little breakout pullback short coming right off the trend line with that real negative bar. So when it broke lower here and pulled back, I'm okay with letting it break below this one and putting your either a limit order right here or just putting a stop under there. Because you're probably coming to here. Just make sure you got enough room to get out before you get to the overnight support, which is right here. That's that blue line running across there. You can see it right there. And we actually pushed on through it. So it wouldn't have mattered, but you don't know that that's going to happen. But all the same, your stop still has to go above this bar. So when it broke lower right here, this would be my signal bar. And when it broke lower, I'd drop me a limit order in here to see if it pulls back and then turns down. That's exactly what it did. And then you make a new low right off the trend line. First entry, second entry, it fails. There's a failed second entry short there. But I wouldn't go long there because there's been no break of that, and it's right into the EMA, and they're running kind of congruent right down through there. So I would skip that. But this is the area I wanted to talk about. The trader that sent me a message, if you draw that trend line, and then this looks like the top, so even though it's coming off those two trend lines, you don't have a break of this yet. And with this being the low of the day and the possible failed breakout, we're right back in the range. I never got a trigger on mine, but he had a trigger on his. I don't know if he had his trend line different or if his signal bar was just different, but he had a trigger. Notice I don't have a trigger there, but I wouldn't have taken that right back into that support resistance line, most likely anyway, especially without a break of that trend line. It turns out it's two-tiered because it ends up pushing on through. So I have a long here. When this failed again, and we're above the EMA and above that trend line, you figure we're maybe going to push up an equal distance, which you just draw your line. Notice we even went higher than that. But again, notice this is a trend line working up here. I drew it off those first couple, closes in there. So I like that to try to push an equal distance up there. And the fact that it looks like a reversal at the bottom of the range. We come back and we test that. You make a little double bottom, so we're probably headed back up again. And it did end up turning down here. But notice what it does, you get a break of this shorter term trend line here, move to a new high, but at that point, I don't like going short there. You could, actually that one could be, that really could be green. I'm going to change that to green. It's a really big bar, but it does back up, so you could have let it break lower. So that one really should probably be green. Only reason it wouldn't be blue with that overshoot is because it's fairly close to the EMA and we're coming off the low of the range, so we might shoot all the way back up to the highs. So you got to be concerned about that. But you would have a trend line working down through here as well. You can kind of see that trend line. Basically, it's a channel rather. And but notice here you get a pullback first entry, pull back second entry, and it does bounce right off this trend line, but because it pushed through the EMA, it's looking like a reversal pattern. So I didn't even give that one a green one because you would expect maybe to come back and test, but a range day, it could have gone higher. So really that one could be green as well. So if you're understanding what's going on, and it would have worked, but with it pushing through the EMA like that, after an overshoot up here, I'd be a little leery of that one. That's why it can't be blue for sure. But you might even go long there. But when it turns up here and turns right back down, you can treat that like a failed second entry long. Look how bearish that bar is. It went out the top and turned, went right out the other side. I'm okay going short right there. And that's definitely a red one. And that got us into the 2 o'clock hour. So I wouldn't be going long here because we went right back through. You needed to have the trap there. And you get a break, move to a new low, and kind of went sideways the rest of the day, and we reversed. And that's what you expect. So yeah, the big picture is a range day. It's a two-tiered range. You can see that fairly easily there. It was obvious early on. Look how many times we turned down off that before we pushed through. And then it double tests it and then goes higher, and just draw your equal distance and look for something to happen right about that same distance. We actually went a little further than that. So as long as you had your exit a tick in front of that, if you caught any of these going up, you're in good shape. And coming down, I probably would have exited one tick above that line where those closes are, but it did push on through and make a new low. Just barely made a new low. And you can see that's right where we bounced. But this was the key area where, from the overnight, that's where all your closes were. And notice once we got back in there, it couldn't go any lower, and it's headed back up. We didn't quite get back up to the midpoint. We missed it by a tick or so. But you've got that channel, and that's an overshoot. And that's a two-tiered channel, which early on you can't tell that until it pushes on through with this little trap right here. This one should be a little lighter, just to make it easier to understand. That's a midline. So yeah, it was. So yeah, on these areas right here, one thing you have to remember is that there will always be, at some point, every channel fails. So, you know, otherwise they just keep going forever. So just because you get a setup there, you still have to understand the big picture and what's going on, and that's what people miss. They just are following the rules, and he had a second, for whatever reason, he had a second entry short there on his chart, where you can see on mine it's a first entry, second entry. It's not even an entry there, it's a third entry right there. So maybe this was his entry, but he had a big bearish bar, and so he had a second entry and he just went short. Now I can't remember if his was through the EMA or not, but when it pushes on through that EMA at a reversal type point, you got to be concerned about that. So I'd like to go back and look at his chart. I think I've already deleted it though. But if you had a reversal right there, you got to be careful of that. So just because you get a setup right off the EMA when you're at a key point like this, this is been a range day, so this is a key point, and it's the bigger pattern really at this point. Even though this went on through, most always on range days, it's going to fail first, even if it's going to go shorter. And that's what happens. It fails first, and it ends up going further down. And you can't overlook that fact. You have to understand what's going on in the big picture. At this level, shorter term on the way up, if you drew your trend line right there, and you copied it and drug it up, it looks like a channel right there. And even though that's off the trend line and right at the EMA, you don't have a break of this yet. So it could shoot down, go one tick through, and then go up to a new high and then turn down. You see that happen over and over and over. So really on the second entry, mine triggers right here, but look at all that stacked up. That's a doji, and so that's congestion. So when it broke out there, that's tempting to go short, but it never triggers on mine until it's outside and you don't really have a good setup there anyway. So it's more the double test rule of this support, and then it goes higher. And really this is where it started trending higher right here. So there's a shorter term trend line in there, even outside of this one. That's a higher low, and a higher low. higher high, higher high, higher high. So that's a trend going up. And so until it's over, it's just not over until you get that trap right there. So keep that in mind. I hope that's helpful to you. But just because it pulls back to the trend line and you get a second entry short, if you're not looking at the big picture, you can get fooled. I mean, most of the time it pulls back there, it's going to be a good entry. But at some point, they all fail. And anytime you get an overshoot like here, that's a good indication that you got to be real careful on the other side, because it won't be long till you get a break of that trend line. And a lot of times on an overshoot, you won't even get a retest. It just goes the other way. So there it is again, pulled in close. Not much else we can say about today. Tomorrow's the fireworks day. Maybe it's already started in the overnight. I don't know. Maybe something came out. I'm not even going to go look. I don't care. We'll see what's happening tomorrow. If it's crazy, we'll sit on the sidelines. And if it's a good trading day, we'll trade it. So just be aware of the EU vote coming out sometime. Actually, I'm just going to pause it and see if there's any. Okay, it looks like, yeah, sometime this evening, the British Prime Minister Cameron came out and said something, made some final pitches for the votes and all. So he may have triggered this. I don't know. Like I said, it doesn't matter. They'll come up with a news item that they'll say caused this, and but this is, we're not trading during this hours. And this is the reason I don't like trading this, because you can't make heads or tails of that. It's just straight up. And there is a failed second entry short. If you wanted to trade there, the price action's still right. Let me just show you this, just so you see it. You got a channel working down, you get a break, a couple of moves to a new low, and look at that new low. First entry short, second entry short, nice reversal bar. There's a short trap there. If you'd have went long, you could have ridden that whole thing up. So the price action works, even when it's crazy, but sometimes it moves too fast, and it moves a lot further and a lot quicker, and so you can get, if the news item comes out and you're in a trade, you could get whipsawed quick enough that you could actually lose and still be right with the price action. So that's why we like to just kind of sit on the sidelines. So just be prepared for tomorrow. Who knows what's going to happen? I'm not sure what time the vote is for what time they're going to vote based on our U.S. time. So some of you may be in different locations other than U.S. anyway. So I don't know what time it's going to be. I really, we'll come in the morning. It'll probably be a news item on the chart, and it'll probably tell us what time. So we'll see. It'll be out there in somewhere if we can find it. I'm not going to worry about it till tomorrow morning when I get here. So, and we'll be able to look at the price action and see. But just before the news comes out, even if it doesn't show on our news item, I'd be aware of what time it's going to come out. And you might be flat, 30 minutes to an hour before that, just so you don't get trapped in a trade going into that news item. So keep that in mind. But I'm going to wrap it up for the day. This is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.